has been said that there is only one ruling class in America.
Welcome to the second episode of Liberty Lifestyle Podcast. Today, Tyler sits down with Danilo Cuellar of peacefulanarchism.com to discuss Danilo's path to anarchism, understanding economics, peaceful parenting, unschooling, and other valuable topics. On peacefulanarchism.com, you can find Danilo's work on many areas such as voluntaryism, agorism, precious metals, Anarcho-Capitalism, Austrian Macro-economics, Statism, the Federal Reserve, Libertarianism, and more. Please subscribe to the Liberty Lifestyles Podcast website and follow us on our social media platforms. Thank you for joining us on this journey. We look forward to having you with us in the future on Liberty Lifestyle Podcast, giving truth the liberty of appearing.
Cool. So you ready?
Yeah.
So
All right. So welcome Danilo Cuellar to the Liberty Lifestyle Podcast. Danilo hosts the peacefulanarchism.com website. And Danilo, before we get into too much of the philosophy about and what that's about and peaceful anarchism, can you tell us a little bit about your background? Kind of maybe something people haven't heard before in previous interviews. Throw something a little personal in there if you'd like, and take as much time as you want with that.
Let's see, something that they haven't heard. I got to do this story a couple times. I grew up not really caring about public school as much, like not really wanting to excel to the best of my ability, right? I basically just did the work and did average and then studied on the side stuff that I was really interested in, like philosophy, like Eastern Western philosophy, like alternative medicine, astronomy, theoretical physics, cosmology, that kind of stuff. And then I got into medicine, holistic medicine. I studied acupuncture and Chinese herbal medicine, and so that got me into learning about Monsanto and vaccines and GMOs and that kind of stuff. And then I was into this website. It was one website called Farm Wars, and they advocated for the banning of GMOs. Right, and at the time I'm like, that sounds like a good idea. Ban GMOs. And but then later, as I learned more and more about precious metals and the monetary system and what is an economy, what is politics and government, and you begin to realize that really the primary evil is statism, is the state, right? And that using the state to ban something does not necessarily, and not only does it not solve the problem, it worsens the problem every single time, right? So that's kind of where I discovered that. And reading about Creature from Jekyll Island and Rothbard, Case for the 100% Gold Dollar. What has government done to our money? Anatomy of the State, right? And then Larken, Most Dangerous Superstition, and then a couple of other books like that. And so I really immersed myself deeply in that. And and then I was telling you before, Michael Shanklin approached me about doing contributing content for the Voluntary Virtues Network in 2014 or in May. And pretty much every single person that has started has stopped except for me. So if you go on the Voluntary Virtues Network channel right now, YouTube channel, you will only see videos of me, of my interviews. It's kind of funny. It's become my default channel. Like, it's kind of funny. Then I just kind of branched out and I admin a bunch of pages, and so yeah.
Okay, nice. And that's interesting. We're going to get into it a little bit more later, but I find it interesting that you didn't really mention you have a background studying in school or in college, all these topics that you've come to understand and be able to articulate so well in the way that you do. And also, let's mention your background in acupuncture, Chinese herbs, massage therapy, and Eastern nutrition, because that all, in my mind, does relate, of course, to what we'll be talking about here tonight. but some people might not see how that relates, but I think that it will. So tell us a little bit more about that background as well.
Yeah, so I first acquainted myself with Eastern philosophy, with Lao Tzu in particular, his seminal book, the Tao Te Ching. I first read that when I was like in 12th grade, 11th grade, and really tiny book, very very poetic, and and I loved it, and very philosophical, and it's basically what's the foundation of Chinese herbal medicine or traditional Chinese medicine, which includes acupuncture, Chinese herbs, gua sha, cupping, moxibustion, acupressure, and acupuncture, and Chinese herbs, and so that forms the foundation, and what I later realized when I started studying voluntarism is how many parallels there are, because compared to Taoism. And they say that Lao Tzu is the first libertarian or anarchist in history, philosopher, right? In that the way he talked about the Tao was always like, the less that you do, the more gets done, right? Or one quote he says is the king or the emperor should rule his kingdom the way you should cook a small fish, which is that you should not turn it and move it around because it just disintegrates in the pan, right? So just very gently you turn it. And so he says the best emperor acts, or he makes his mandates and laws and edicts so that people don't even know he exists. And by meddling very little, things get done. So to me, that's kind of the description of spontaneous order, in that the more freedom that you give to people, you will find that things just thrive and succeed and work themselves out. People find solutions. People self-regulate. You don't need an overarching dominant institution to violently impose arbitrary edicts. And when you do that, you most often create more chaos, more destruction, more suffering.
Wow, yeah, I mean, that's quite the opposite of what we have going on, though, and what most people would think about that. And I think people cringe at the thought of letting go of so much control and kind of if the reins come off more. But I think we'll talk about this as well, how this at home can be practiced, and the results are not what most people think they would be when you take the reins off when raising children as well. But let's switch into peacefulanarchism.com that you founded in November 2013, I believe. Mm-hmm. And what is peaceful anarchism?
So, yeah, I actually decided on that name pretty quickly. I was pretty sure about it, and it really fits me. A lot of people say it's a perfect name for my for my podcast and my website, and that I embody that. And my wife actually didn't like it because she thought, anarchism is just too contentious, too inflammatory of a word. And I said, that's why we put the peaceful in there. You got to make sure you make it clear we're about peace. That's our focus, right? So in the beginning I started writing articles for the most part, and including other people's videos. But then once I started making my own content, slowly it kind of morphed into focus on my own content now. And so that's all I do now, is basically just post, my short videos and my interviews and I used to do solo podcasts, and so I used to do that. I focus on anarchism, voluntarism, agorism, precious metals, the monetary system, central banks, Federal Reserve, homeschooling, unschooling, peaceful parenting, philosophy, morality, economics, that kind of stuff. And actually, when people ask me about it, like when I tell people, when I meet people and I talk to them and I tell them, I have a podcast and a YouTube channel, most people are like, oh, wow, it's so cool. What's the name? And so I said, hold on. I'm not going to tell you the name yet. Let me tell you what I talk about. So I say all of those things what I just mentioned, except anarchism, right? I say everything, and they're like, wow, that sounds really cool. And so in that way, I think I show them that I'm intellectual. I'm a deep thinker. And then after they understand all that, then they say, oh, by the way, I'm an anarchist too.
Yeah.
And so in that way, it kind of dispels their apprehension as to what they might feel if I were to say that word first, right? So that's my way.
Absolutely, and I think the tagline is "Just do good things." I think you could start with that as well.
Yeah.
Just start with the tagline.
Yeah, actually, I can't claim ownership. I can't claim credit for that one. I got that from this. There's this at one point, my wife and I were kind of got into a little bit of a raw vegan group, and we went to like one or two of their meetings. And the one guy, and I was on their emailing list, and every time he would finish his email, he finished with "Just do good things," and I thought that was such an awesome phrase to end your, end his emails, and I'm like, I'm gonna adopt that. I loved it so much.
That's great. Yeah. You've also been involved with a lot of other networks like the Conscious Resistance, the Seeds of Liberty. You mentioned the Voluntary Virtues Network. Tell us a little bit about that and your kind of relationship with these various groups and how that's going.
Yeah, so the Voluntary Virtues Network started in May 2014. Michael Shanklin approached me about that. Probably maybe like 30, 40 other content creators. We were all making videos for this one YouTube channel. And so it was really full of people and different kinds of videos. And then slowly they all whittled away, fell by the wayside, and I'm the last man standing. And so yeah, that's fun. And then the other one is the Conscious Resistance Network, headed up by Derek Rose and John Vibes. And he approached me a while ago, and he wanted me to post my videos on his channel, so I do that. I met him in Liberty Fest, I think twice in Brooklyn, here in New York, and he's a cool guy. And I read his book, the first book of his trilogy, and he's a really cool guy. And then the Seeds of Liberty podcast, I started with Jeremy Hengler and Dave Painter from Facebook, and we started that going to come on 2 years now, and I think it's 2 years, yeah. And they're actually going to have their 100th episode very soon, next March, and so. We started that together, and I mean, slowly, because they transitioned to a different format or a different platform, and I couldn't follow, so I kind of stopped. But they're still doing it, so that's great. But yeah, we basically, the way the name was originated was Dave was saying, I feel like I'm Johnny Appleseed planting seeds of liberty, and he's like, wait a minute, seeds of liberty. That's how it came about.
That's awesome.
But yeah, they're doing pretty good with their Facebook page. Jeremy makes his memes, and some of them go pretty good, pretty viral. So yeah, it's good stuff.
Excellent. So, how did you become an unschooler, and are you a radical unschooler?
Yeah, it's a good question. One of the things I tell people that I focus on a lot in my channel is, I think, homeschooling and unschooling and peaceful parenting. I think those are, partly because I have kids and so I identify, and also I hang out with a lot of homeschooling and some unschooling families, and so so I'm pretty acquainted with that. But yeah, I just like to focus on that because I really think that the way that we raise our kids is paramount to transforming the future the way we want to see it. So basically, I tell people, whatever way you want to see the future, that's how you raise your kids, right? Or another way is, some people say, you got to raise your kids to be tough, give them thick skin so they can deal with the world, because it's a cruel and heartless world, right? Whereas the way I look at it, I say, well, maybe if we raise our kids to be, kind, gentle, compassionate, and loving human beings, maybe the world will then be a little less cold and heartless, rather than preparing them for like a war. And so, for me, that's the idea of peaceful parenting and how important that is. Treating your children with respect, respecting their self-ownership, their rights and what they want to do, what their interests are, what their passions are. And to me, that's what unschooling is all about, is respecting what kids are actually interested in and helping them to pursue that. So when you say radical unschooler, I think of Dana Martin, who I interviewed, and she's a fascinating woman, and she wrote, she's done a lot for unschooling, but yeah. So I think when you say radical unschooling, what I think about is like no rules, absolutely. Kids eat whatever, kids go to bed whenever, kids do whatever, and I don't think we do that. Because my wife does work from home, so we have to go to bed, at a particular time, and we don't really let them eat whatever. Basically, try to get a little more healthy stuff, basically. So I wouldn't say we're radical in that way, but I definitely would say that the unschooling aspect, as little structure as possible, and basically. The way I describe it to some people is, I don't know the future. I don't know what will be relevant in their future. And so how can I possibly tell them, this is what you need to know for your future in 20 years when you're an adult, right? I have no idea, right? So basically, whatever they're interested in, whatever they follow with enthusiasm, with passion, that will necessarily be what's relevant to their future. Right. So therefore, again, it's like Lao Tzu, you have to step back and stop intervening, stop meddling, and just allow them to develop in the way that they will, exposing them to different things, but just allow them to develop. And you have to be patient and not be afraid. And I think given the chance, kids will succeed and will thrive. Like, that's by default, because I think we're all born with a passion and a love for learning. Kids are curious by nature, right? And that's basically, to me, what government school does primarily, which is destroy and beat out the love of learning. And that's the ultimate tragedy.
Absolutely. And yeah, you mentioned Dana Martin there. She's a little bit more of a controversial figure in the scene, and not just because of the radical unschooling, but other things. And I've watched a lot of interviews with her, and she's great. I'm thinking about it a lot lately, how ridiculous it is to assume that we can know what the kids will need to learn now in order for the future that's approaching in such an exponential growth rate of technology and how we learn even now. And I think you even mentioned in one of your blog posts about that, the video blog series, just mentioning, and I've been thinking about that a lot recently, how ridiculous it is to assume that we know exactly what each child is going to know. And it just happens to all be the same as well for each child.
Right.
And something else you mentioned, this phrase in one of your video blogs, I believe, was an artificial need for the state. And kind of explain to me, what is an artificial need for the state, and how does it get created, and what is the effect it has on us?
Well, I'm trying to figure out which video that was. But you remember which one it was?
Well, just go off of that term.
Okay.
There's an artificial need that's created, and then it's said, oh, now it's justified because we need it for this reason.
Well, I often describe the state as the self-licking ice cream cone, in that it creates its own need, right? Or another way to put it is the bureaucracy must expand to satisfy the needs of the expanding bureaucracy. So I think that the state is something that people feel that they need, primarily because most people have grown up in authoritarian households, where they understand the difference between an authority figure and an inferior, and the parent and child, and that is as made clear to them in those kinds of households. And then when they go to government school, it's made even more clear the difference between student and teacher, and you have to know your place, and you don't talk when the teacher's speaking, and you got bells, and you got to move here when the bell goes, and so you're very regimented and structured that way, and people, they begin to feel like, and also, just the history that they teach, how the state was needed to eradicate child labor, right? The the state was needed to abolish chattel slavery, right? So in so many ways, the message is to promote the artificial need for the state. And so, and you know, the other thing I was thinking about recently is it's just amazing how people, they're surprised when I mention this concept, because you're like, if you went to a school that was paid for by Coca-Cola, what kind of stuff do you think you would learn in that school? Would you learn the value of juicing? Most likely not. You know, or a school that's paid for by Monsanto. Would you learn the value of, you know, good nutrition and holistic medicine? Most likely not. So, you know, whoever, how do they say, whoever pays the piper calls the tune, right? So wherever the funding is coming from, you really have to expect that institution will make sure that it will create the artificial need for its existence, right? So all government schools are funded by taxation, right? And so, you know, it's Department of Education. And so how can you not think that kids that go to government school will not be inundated with this kind of propaganda? And so, yeah, it's not surprising when you think about it like that. You think about, you know, from economic standpoint, human incentives, right? You know, you're getting money from here, so you gotta realize what's going to be the outcome of that. So, yeah, so in that perspective, it's obvious.
Now, did you go to public school?
Yes, I did. And you know what's interesting is that's one of the things that my parents, who not necessarily are supportive of homeschooling, I got, you know, a good amount of resistance. And one thing my mother said was you went to public school and you turned out okay. Look, you have 2 kids, you got a beautiful wife, you went to college, you got a nice profession, you know, you're a smart guy. What's wrong with public school? and basically what I respond to that is, well, there's something called a principle by Frederick Bastiat called the seen versus the unseen, right? So you know, what you see, like for example, like taxation, right? You know, what you see is money being stolen from productive individuals, and it goes to building a bridge, and they say, look at that, it's wonderful, the government built a bridge, isn't that a wonderful thing? And then, but that's the seen. So the unseen is, what would the people have done voluntarily with their currency if it wasn't stolen by force, right? And so the same thing, I was forced to go to government school for 12 years, right? 15,000 hours. And that's the scene, right? I learned all this stuff. I mean, I wouldn't even call it learning, because learning is voluntary, right? It's more like indoctrination. You were not given a choice. And so the seen is that I went there, but the unseen is all the lost opportunities of time that I could have spent devoted to learning things I was actually interested in. That's the part you don't see. The destruction of the potential, the unseen potential. So yeah. Right.
Yeah, it's horrible. And, you know, that's pretty interesting that once you've come out of that, you can still manage, though, to develop critical thinking. It can be reinstilled. You can deprogram. You can go through that process. We can still heal. It's possible. It's unfortunate, like you said, that the time can't be, you can't get that back. And I feel the same way. It almost angers me to a certain point. Switching gears, though, let's move into a little bit more of economics. What is the free market and or a free society, and do we have that now?
Yeah, the free market, the way I describe it to people is just, or capitalism even, synonymous to me, is peaceful people interacting voluntarily, consensually, right, with consenting contracts or transactions. And to me, that forms the majority of what we call the economy, right? The economy is just billions of peaceful people interacting consensually, voluntarily. and everything, and none of that requires force at all, right? All of that is completely voluntary. Every business must survive solely based on the merit of its good or service, right? It's a meritocracy. Whereas the state is the parasite that comes in, inserts itself, and siphons off a small portion of that wealth, that productivity, right? And then comes around and claims that we would be, violent cannibals if it were not, if it did not exist. So yeah, to me, yeah, the free market is just again what people do naturally, which is be productive. Most people are productive, right? Whereas whenever the state tries to help people that maybe can't be productive for whatever reason, most of the time it's doing more harm than good. Like, let's say the welfare state, right? Incentivizes people or rewards them for sloth, for laziness, right? And it sets up like the poverty trap, which is like, they can't get out of poverty because if they make past a certain amount, they're going to lose all their benefits and they're going to feel it severely, and it's just really hard to get past that hump and earn more than what they're getting in benefits from the welfare state, right? So that's, to me, yeah, the free market is just everyone who uses who just transacts voluntarily, who just does not use violence to solve their problems. To me, that's what the free market is.
Okay, great. And on a free society, I mean, just kind of extend on that a little bit. Does the free market facilitate a free society? What is your definition of a free society? Is that something you're striving towards even?
Yeah, so, yeah, I personally like the term voluntary society, but I mean, I think definitely that, again, when people are allowed to transact freely and voluntarily, that naturally to me is a free society, except for the fact that people, for some reason, again, going back to artificial need, believe that the state is necessary and legitimate and that we would be lost and chaotic and violent without it. Whereas I think what we're trying to do with our podcasts and writings is have people realize that no, not only will we be fine without the state, we will thrive immeasurably without the state. So a free society or a voluntary society is not such an abstract thing to me. Again, it's just, it just happens when people understand, as most people do, the basic laws of morality, except for some reason we believe that people who call themselves the state, agents of the state, have this giant exemption from morality. So once we divorce people of that contradiction, I think that statism will just crumble immediately of its own accord.
Nice. Yeah, and so now I kind of want to bring it together with how did you get into economics? Was there a specific book? Was there a specific video series? Somebody you spoke to at work? What kind of brought you from your background, 15,000 hours in public school, to a kind of more Eastern studies in college, which maybe kind of opened you up to accepting things a little bit more, maybe in a certain way? What was it that economics? Because where's the jump there into that interest?
So the first time I heard about economics was in 12th grade. I took an economics class, and I remember the one lesson I remember from that class was the guy was talking about the law of diminishing marginal utility, and he said it was like 7th period, right? So near the end of the school day, and so he said, "Who here didn't have lunch?" Right? A kid raised his hand. So he's like, "Go to my desk. There's a box of donuts over there. Eat as many donuts as you can." And so he's teaching, and then he comes back like, I don't know, 15 minutes later, and the kid's done, and he's like, "All right, now first donut, scale of 1 to 10, how good was it?" And he's like, "Oh, it was awesome. I didn't have lunch. It was beautiful. It was, I don't know, 9, 10. And he's like, "Second donut." He's like, "Yeah, that's still pretty good, maybe 8, 9. Third donut," he's like, "Oh, I was getting full." After that, 5, 6. Fourth, oh, I didn't finish it. It was horrible. Third, and so that was a great illustration of the law of diminishing marginal utility, right? The more that we consume a particular unit, the lower its value becomes, right? And that was a fascinating thing that I always kept. And also, one other interesting thing is, I remember that was 1999, and the book Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki just came out, and he held it up, and he said this is a great book. You should all read this book. And of course, I didn't. But only years later, when I was studying more about economics, I kind of started reading a little bit of Robert Kiyosaki and learning about him, because he focuses a lot on business, entrepreneurship, precious metals, the monetary system, central banks, Federal Reserve. So yeah, he's a pretty interesting guy. And also another interesting thing I remember from that class is he said, Ben Bernanke is the most powerful man in the world. And I had no idea who Ben Bernanke was, and only later, years later, I discovered he was the chairman of the Federal Reserve. And I'm sorry, not Ben Bernanke.
Alan Greenspan.
Alan Greenspan, right? Alan Greenspan. He was the chairman. Sorry, yeah, my fault. Alan Greenspan, yeah, with the glasses.
It's okay, they're all bastards.
The glasses and the wrinkly face, yeah. Right, and so yeah, I realized only later, like how true that statement was. He's the most powerful man in the world. And just how immensely influential and deep the connections go between central banks and the state, and how it's the lifeblood of the state, right? Because once the state monopolizes control over the currency, that's the lifeblood of the economy, and that in itself really secures the state, the power of the state, right? So yeah, that was fascinating. And then later I learned about, Creature from Jekyll Island. That was an awesome book. Taught me a lot about precious metals and the economy and central banks and the history of central banks. And then Economics in One Lesson, Henry Hazlitt. There was another book, Louis Carabini. The book was called Inclined to Liberty. Very, very tiny book, but very, very interesting book about basic economics. And it's fascinating. Oh yeah, and another YouTube channel. I don't know if you're familiar with Amanda Billyrock or Amanda Johnson. That's what she calls herself now. You familiar with her? Yeah. So she used to call herself Amanda Billyrock, and she had this YouTube channel, and she basically went through each chapter of Economics in One Lesson, and she did like a 2 or 3 minute video just describing each chapter. And I thought that was awesome. And so I learned a lot from that. But yeah, economics I think is foundational to understanding business and entrepreneurship and the free market and capitalism. And you begin to realize that people are not nefarious and sinister and wicked. Most people act based on rational self-interest, right? And when you begin to understand that, you begin to realize, like, wait a minute, okay, so it kind of makes sense, the way a business works and why they put out a particular product, and but like I think most people, when they come to anarchism, a lot of people come from the left, where they hate corporations, right? Like the Occupy people, which is fine, but you have to realize that the corporation really is not the central problem. It's part of the problem, but it's not the central problem, right? The reason that they are so influential and powerful is because they have sovereign immunity, right? State protection, the corporate shield. That's why they're powerful. So it's like you cut off, you go after Chase, or you go after Monsanto, or you go after, Halliburton or Raytheon. You're just like cutting off the heads of the Hydra, right? Just another one's going to grow back, another one's going to grow back. So you have to go to the root, right? Which is, or statism, right? Or the state. Because in order for them to become so powerful and protectionist, they all the time have to appeal to the state for protection and give, bribe lobbyists and influence various legislation and laws and minimum wage. And so economics, foundational for anybody. And And when I talk to people about economics, I don't really mention the word economics, because when you say that to people, their eyes glaze over and they're like, "Oh, that's boring." But when you just talk about it, the principles of seen versus the unseen, the broken window fallacy, and let's say law of unintended consequences or opportunity costs or all these things, right? They begin to understand, like, yeah, that makes sense. And let me give you one example real quick. So my mother, who is not she's very critical of me, by the way. She's like a Bernie Sanders supporter, socialist, Democrat, hardcore Democrat. And so I was in the kitchen and she broke a glass, and she's like, "Oh my God, I broke a glass." And she's like, "I'm so annoyed because, it's just a waste of my time. It's like 15 minutes down the drain. I'll never get back. I have to clean the glass up." I said, "You ever heard of the broken window fallacy?" It was a great way to bring it up, and how destruction can never produce a benefit, right? Destruction just equals destruction, and for the same reason, we didn't get out of the depression because of World War II, right? It's like saying murder is good because murder helped us to get out. What? That doesn't make sense. So, and yeah, basically, the entire state apparatus in terms of taxation is like the broken window fallacy writ large, just stealing people's productivity, and who knows what they could have bought for it? Who knows what people would have voluntarily supported? We have no idea, right? So yeah.
Yeah, that's great. One of my favorite memes lately online is when you're arguing politics with someone and they've never heard of the Rothschilds, and it's this guy like laughing hilariously, because it's so true, like you said, how influential that structure is. There's a reason why we're not taught about that in school. There's a reason why it's not brought up, and they teach you the surface level things. But it's great. The Creature from Jekyll Island, of course, Key, The Secrets of the Federal Reserve, Eustace Mullins, books along these lines, just written quite a long time ago, relatively speaking, as far as the internet. Way before the internet was here, these researchers were putting out the work, and still Creature from Jekyll Island is not
Hello everybody, this is Danilo from peacefulanarchism.com, out here in nature once again, enjoying the spontaneous order that is the world around us. Today I want to talk about the idea or the argument that we need the state because we need somebody who's going to make the rules. We need somebody in charge. Everybody has to comply with the same rules. There must be a uniformity. Somebody has to be in charge. Now, I think this illustrates the fundamental misunderstanding of what anarchists advocate, in that we advocate for no rulers, but not no rules. There are fundamental rules inherent in nature, in mathematics, in chemistry, in thermodynamics, in morality, in dating, that are commonly understood, that don't require a central authority to fabricate decrees and mandates punishable with violence. It's not necessary. Everyone knows if you try to violate the law of gravity, what happens? If you try to violate laws of mathematics, you just make bad mathematics. If you try to violate the self-ownership of another human being in the form of theft, assault, rape, and murder, there will be natural consequences. Whether it be by those individuals, those victims, or their families, or their friends, or a private security agency. The fundamental idea of anarchism and voluntarism is that nobody has an exemption to the laws of universal morality. And that is exactly what the state is. One giant exemption on morality. If the actions that the state or agents of the state do are done by private individuals, it is a crime. There is no exemption on morality. There can never be. So we are surrounded by a world of rules. You know, as I said, the dating world, many rules about how to date, and it mostly involves consent. When there is no consent, that's not called dating anymore. It's not called a relationship. It's called assault or rape. So it's fundamental to understand that these rules that people, by definition, by default, abide by, they were not formulated by some bureau, by some committee, by a group of bureaucrats sitting in a smoky room behind closed doors, inventing rules that everyone else must live by. No, that's not how the world works. Prices are not determined by some small group of individuals or a committee or a bureau. That's not how prices work. Prices, like interest rates, like money, the way money should be, are determined in the free market. Now, interest rates and money can be subverted and controlled by ruling classes, ruling institutions, and used and perverted to be used for their aims. But historically, these things are natural outcrops of the free market, of economics, of capitalism. So we all inherently live morally, for the most part. Most people do not use violence to solve problems in their daily lives. They don't advocate other people use violence to solve problems in their daily lives intentionally. They don't advocate for a large group to solve problems using violence. So why is the state some giant exception of morality? Why do people believe that if enough people get together and vote, that all of a sudden theft is not theft and it can be called taxation? Or all of a sudden it's not kidnapping and it's called the war on drugs? Or any number of victimless crimes. All of a sudden it's not mass murder and it's called war. Only when people fabricate this belief in authority, this idea of statism, do the world of morality that we all inherently understand as children in the form of don't hit and don't take other people's things, only when people fabricate these ideas is this world mutated and perverted and transformed into something monstrous and barbaric. I often ask people, what is the worst thing in the world, the thing that you would most want to see disappear? And many people tell me, war, ignorance, suffering, poverty. And I would assert that many of those things either stem directly or indirectly from the state or the idea of statism. Many people say we should abolish the government. No, there is nothing to abolish. What is the government? A group of men and women with guns taking your things, saying that they have a right to do things which you do not have. because they have a uniform, because they have a badge, because they are an agent of the state. And when we no longer recognize anyone to have an exemption from morality, we will by definition eradicate statism. It is not about abolishing the government. It is about recognizing that no one has an exemption to morality. You don't have to burn down the buildings, you don't have to overthrow the government, you don't have to assassinate anyone. Destroy all the buildings, take away all the guns, all the tanks and the jets and the public schools. Give someone a switch to turn off government. If you can turn off government, if you could turn off the state and make a stateless society tomorrow, would you do it? You could, but it wouldn't change anything, because you have not appealed to the mind of the people. Those things only exist because the people want them to exist. They have created an artificial demand for the state. And so it is therefore incumbent on us as freedom-loving individuals, as voluntarists, to educate people that there is no such thing as the state. There are only men and women with guns forcing you to pay them and forcing you to pay homage to them and their rulers. So there is no state, there is no such thing as a government. There is only the idea of statism and the belief in authority, the belief that because some people have been voted upon by the masses, they can commit atrocities without reproach. They are beyond reproach because they have received the majority of the vote. And what is that called? It's called gang rape. It's called tyranny of the majority. It's called mob mentality. And that is not how peaceful people act. That's not how free people think. That is not civilization. That is the antithesis of civilization. So I implore you, please educate your fellow man about morality, about economics, about business, about free markets, about capitalism. That is how you improve the world. There is nothing to abolish. It's just a belief. Thank you for watching. This is Danilo from peacefulanarchism.com. Enjoy nature.
All right, cool. Yeah, so what are your thoughts on the whole cryptocurrency and Steemit and Bitcoin or Dash? What are your thoughts on crypto in general?
Yeah, I mean, I love them. I love the fact that they're challenging the dominance of the Federal Reserve note or the U.S. dollar, because I really feel that that Federal Reserve product is really the foundation of the control of the United States federal government around, not only here but around the world, in terms of the petrodollar, right? And the way, I don't know if you're familiar with Mike Maloney from goldsilver.com. He produces he's a gold silver dealer, but he also does a great documentary series, mini documentary series called The Hidden Secrets of Money. And he's done like 8 episodes. Each episode is like half hour. Really awesome, very informative. And basically, he says that we have a great deal going on, right? So the deal is we give everybody else paper and they give us stuff. Isn't that an awesome deal? We print the paper and they give us real things, refrigerators and cars and how can you get better than that? Electronics, TVs, whatever, we just give them this paper. And that paper is backed up by the might of the U.S. military, right? And, prime ministers or dictators or, rulers of other states that attempt to circumvent that that petrodollar, that U.S. monopoly, that world reserve currency, try to use either, trade in other natural resources like oil, or trade in gold and silver, or trade in their own currency. Many, many times they come to disastrous conclusions, toppling of regimes, assassinations, occupations, coups, all this kind of stuff. And so you really, you begin to understand how powerful and how necessary the dominance of the US dollar is to the power of the state. And that's why cryptocurrency is so valuable, because it's undermining it, it's weakening it, it's hastening its demise, not by force or violence, but in a way that's like stealth. And it's like I like to imagine cryptocurrency like a ghost, and the United States is like a man with a sword trying to swing at the ghost. and the ghost is like just laughing at him, because all he knows is violence. That's all they know, right? And I remember hearing one time that in an attempt to confiscate or shut down a Bitcoin site, like some agents of the state went to this place and they're like, you guys have Bitcoin here. We hereby seize your Bitcoin, and they're like shutting, destroying their computers and their monitors, and the people there were just laughing at it. They're like, haven't you heard of the cloud? Or like, what's wrong with you people? Or you really think you're gonna kill our Bitcoin by destroying our computers? and so it's just funny how backward agents of the state are. And it's kind of funny how I think that a lot of people who are into like conspiracies, like, who get really deep into Alex Jones and maybe David Icke, and they really think that the state is like so advanced, right? They're like 20 years advanced in terms of technology, and they just know so much, and you can never outsmart the state. No, to me, that is definitely not the case. It's like, you look at, I don't know, look at how much electronics have developed, and then look at how much public schools have developed over decades, and you'll see how slowly something improves and progresses when there's no competition, when there's just a monopoly, right? Whereas when there is competition, you see people just, inventing new things, improving things, making it cheaper, making it faster, making it smaller. And you don't need any control. You don't need any mandates. You don't need any rules of that. Things just happen, right? So I love Bitcoin. I love, I don't really know as much as a lot of other people. I have a Bitcoin wallet, an Airbitz wallet. But yeah, I hear a lot of great things about, Dash and Litecoin and Dogecoin. And I remember seeing a list of the names like Philosopher Coin and Hobo Coin and Ron Paul Coin. There's like, for everything you can imagine, which is awesome, competition, bring it on. And it's funny, I like to talk to people about Bitcoin, and most people, what they know about Bitcoin is what they see on, like, CBS, NBC, Fox, ABC. That's all they know, right? And so they're like, oh, Bitcoin was hacked. This Bitcoin was stolen. This one got corrupted. These people, stole all their money and all. That's all they know about it, right?
Yeah. Mount Gox. That's all they know. Mount Gox.
Yeah, exactly. And so. And I've interviewed on my channel a lot of Bitcoin specialists and experts, and it's just fascinating to talk to them, because they can just debunk these myths so quickly. Like the Mount Gox, for example, it collapsed. It was like what do you call that? A hub, right? A meeting place where people stored their coins there, and they could also trade and buy things. And that kind of got hacked, and people lost a massive amount of Bitcoin. But it's kind of like saying, if a bank gets robbed, then the money, the problem is with the money. No, the problem is with the security of the institution that's holding the money, right? Not the money. Or they say, oh, people do, they trade in drugs, they buy drugs with Bitcoin. Yeah, then they buy more drugs with dollars. So what's your point? You know? But yeah, I mean, I love the fact that it's it's anonymous. I love the fact that it's like lightning fast speed. You can transfer money long distances for a fraction of the amount of Western Union and all these antiquated ways people used to transfer money, and people still do, unfortunately. But I think that's one of the best ways that that we will evolve past statism. Is it's not about abolishing the state. It's not about destroying the institution. It's not about defunding this agency or that agency. I think it's about, just as the Buckminster Fuller quote, right? You don't destroy a paradigm by fighting against it. You produce a new paradigm that will render it obsolete, right? So that's one of the best ways. That's the way I see cryptocurrency happening. It's just rendering it obsolete. Like when the email came, who uses mail anymore? Who writes out their mail? Nobody, right? So when Bitcoin, or it doesn't even have to be Bitcoin, whatever cryptocurrency establishes the dominant cryptocurrency as being efficient, quick, able to transfer value over long distances very quickly, and is secure, encrypted, all that kind of stuff. Whatever the market decides is the best suited for those attributes, that's awesome, And I think that once people begin, and also the other thing I love about Bitcoin, and I tell this often, is that the value has risen not because of a law. Like, for example, there's legal tender laws that say we have to use Federal Reserve notes, right? By law, you don't use it, you get punished. There is no law people have to use Bitcoin. So why are people using it? Because it's awesome. Because it's convenient, because it's fast, because it's secure, right? So basically people want to use it. They naturally gravitate towards it. And that's why it's so great, right? That's why the value is rising, because people are voluntarily using it. People are basing their businesses on it, and they're forming their infrastructure around it. And so yeah, that's why, because it's voluntary, basically. It's all voluntary. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's very interesting to follow. And as of yesterday, when this interview has been recorded with you and I, Bitcoin reached an all-time high and is expected to go even higher. But that's only because, and I'm not an expert on this either, but because it was consumed into the exchange. So it's now becoming a tradable asset. And that's going to kind of transform it entirely, and the regulation departments there could actually destroy that form of cryptocurrency. That does not mean that cryptocurrency is going anywhere, and unless they can get rid of the internet, it's not going anywhere, in my opinion. I love that our Buckminster Fuller quote that you shared. I read it all the time. I've used it in some of my work. I posted on Facebook because it's so true that, and that's kind of the Agorism, or even Anarcho-Capitalism. We don't need to abolish or end the Federal Reserve. We just simply need to use the non-predatory ways of exchanging goods, and that's it. There's no fighting, there's no protesting, there's no marching to any Capitol Hill. It's just a information exchange and a change in behavior. And I think cryptocurrency is a bridge to a different future. I don't think it's going to be a solution forever, always. I think it's a bridge out of our current circumstances. So I'd like to share a couple quotes along those lines from Milton Friedman here. And one is, he said, "I think the internet is going to be one of the major forces for reducing the role of government." Mm-hmm. And he also said, and internet kind of came along late in his life, so he was quite along his path at that point when he made that statement, obviously. The other one is, "The most important ways in which I think the internet will affect the big issue is that it will make it more difficult for the government to collect taxes."
Nice.
Yeah.
One of my favorite quotes along those lines is John Kerry, who said, "This thing called the internet is making it hard to govern." I love that.
Right. Exactly. So did you vote in the most recent Donald Trump-Hillary Clinton election?
I vote with my dollar every day. I vote with my money, with my attention, my participation. I don't vote in elections, in farces. The last time I did vote was 2008. I voted for Obama, and I often tell that on podcasts just because we like to confess our sins, right, as anarchists and volunteers. and because I only voted for him because I didn't really care. I was completely indifferent before learning about all this stuff. I didn't care about politics. I didn't care about government. I was completely indifferent. I was focused on my own stuff, my acupuncture, my piano, my chess. That's all that stuff that interested me. And so my mother said, who was a very ardent Democrat, she's like, vote, go out and vote. It's your civic duty. I'm like, all right, I'll vote. Who should I vote for? For Obama. Okay, I'll vote for Obama. Okay, so I voted. But afterwards, I just learned about it, and I'm like, no, why am I going to do this? This is ridiculous. This is not something that we should be proud of. It's not something that we should throw our support behind. There's just no way that an institution of coercive power can wield a force for good. It kind of reminds me of the quote by Charlie Chaplin, which is, it's like if you need power, you only need power to harm people, right? And without that, besides that, love can do everything else, right? You only need power to do harmful things. So that kind of really really resonated with me. So voting, no, don't recommend it. Don't do it. I just stay away from it. I just tell people, the way you vote, the way you improve the world is, you put your ideas out into the marketplace on YouTube. You write, you talk to your friends, you raise your children, to be peaceful, loving, compassionate human beings, and that's how you make the world a better place. Not by empowering and legitimizing a violent monopoly. No, that's definitely not the way that we achieve progress.
Yeah, and Charlie Chaplin, I believe, became an anarchist later in life, if I'm not mistaken. And I don't know about the next quote I have for us here, George Carlin. Mm-hmm. If you voted, then you can't complain. Right. Not the other way around, right? Yeah. If you didn't vote, you can't complain, because once you give your consent, you've given consent. If you lose, if your master doesn't get in, and you've lost, well, you already consented to democracy, and now you've said, I'm okay with whatever unfolds here, even if I lose. And so you have no right to complain once you've voted. So any other thoughts on the Trump presidency? How does that affect you?
I was asked this by my grandfather and my mother recently, I guess after he was elected, which they completely hated him, of course. Most of my family is Democrat, and they completely hated him. I think my mother wanted Hillary because she's a woman. That's about it. Which is so ridiculous. It's like, and I told her, you know what? If there's a serial killer, I don't care if he's black, I don't care if he's white, I don't care if he's yellow, Indian, Native American, I don't care if it's a man or woman. I don't want to have a serial killer near me, and I think the person should be stopped. So it doesn't matter what gender they are. That doesn't matter. What matters is the institution that they will be on the throne of, the institution that they will be wielding, the power and the violence that they will be wielding. That's what really matters, not what gender, not what color, not what race they are. Who cares? That doesn't matter at all. So basically, I tell, when people say, how is Trump going to affect me? No, I'm not going to change my life. I don't change my life based on the rulers, based on, who sits on the throne. No, I won't. I'm not going to raise my kids differently. I'm not going to treat my friends differently. I'm not going to, patronize different businesses. I'm going to continue doing what I'm doing, regardless of who's in power. Promoting anarchism and voluntarism and peaceful parenting and agorism, philosophy, morality, economics. I think that's how we improve the world. Is I tell people, if you think improving the world is by using government or force, then by definition your ideas must be worthless, because you don't believe you can influence people by just putting your ideas out there, like writing or on a YouTube channel or on a podcast. You're telling me that your ideas are worthless because you think that that's not good enough. You need to have the gun. You need to have control of the gun to wield your influence, and that's a very tragic thing. So,
absolutely. On a higher note, I've been watching a lot of your video blog series, and I just think that the scenery, even the background ambiance of the birds chirping and whatnot is just beautiful. I love that series. I think you should definitely stick with it. You said yourself you're quite proud of it, and I think you should be. The thoughts and the ideas that you get out there are clear. And I just had a discussion with somebody on Facebook the other night, and he kind of made the point about clarifying the message, especially with a couple of my projects being a little bit more new. And I think you do a wonderful job there. Also, I was just finishing up a couple last-minute thoughts and looking at the Facebook channel and saw that you were very good at playing the piano. And not just very good, like an excellent piano player. I watched one where you were playing with your small infant.
Oh, right. That's on my my Facebook, right. I have some piano videos on my YouTube channel, on a different YouTube channel that I used to have called Peruvian Pianist, and I have a couple of those. And I also have videos, I don't know if you saw, of my, I used to do stand-up comedy, and so I have some of that.
No, I didn't.
Yeah. I could send you those. But yeah, I've been playing piano since I was 12, and the funny thing is, a lot of parents who they want their kids to learn an instrument, right? And they say, okay, you're going to learn this instrument for this many years, and I don't care if you like it or not, you're going to learn it for this many years, right? And most of the time, the kid doesn't really have a choice, right? And it's kind of unfortunate, because I think that's a recipe for destroying the love of music, right? When you're forced to do it, regardless if you like it or not, right? So I started learning the piano at age 12, which most piano teachers would tell you is way too late, right? However, I loved it so much that nobody ever had to tell me to practice, ever. I would practice like 1 hour before I went to school in the morning. Wake up for like 4:30, practice an hour, come home, practice 2 more hours every single day, Monday to Friday. And I loved it, right? And I got really good, and I performed in spring concerts, solos and ensembles and all that. And I stayed with it, and I made some recordings. I have some recordings on SoundCloud, on YouTube. But yeah, that's just one thing that I think has enriched my life and is continuing to enrich. And I have my baby grand over here, and my 2 kids, they like to play a little bit, so I teach them a little bit. Oh, this is the other thing I want to bring up, is I love chess and I love piano, right? And I'm pretty good at both of them. But again, I did both voluntarily. Nobody ever had to tell me, study chess or study piano. I did it because I loved it, right? And so I can understand and see how when people learn that about me, they say, oh, so you're going to teach your kids chess and piano, right? And they're kind of understandable, like, well, you're good at chess and piano, so obviously you're going to teach your kids. And I respond by saying, no, I'm not necessarily. If they're interested, if they're interested in it, sure, So the way I do it is I practice piano a lot around them. I play I have my chess set and I play people, and sometimes I teach the other kids in the homeschooling group if they're interested. But I don't sit my kids down and say, now we're going to learn piano for a half hour. Now we're going to learn chess for a half hour, because that's exactly how they will end up hating it, and I definitely don't want to do that. And so basically, if you want your kids to learn something, basically just show them how much you love to do it. And if they are interested, then they're interested. That's great. So yeah, I think that's one thing that authoritarian parents should change.
Right. It goes back to your point before, kind of taking the reins off, taking control off a little bit, and letting, I was explaining this to Cassandra the other night, which is like when you plant a seed in the soil, all you do is just give it the water, give it the environment, give it the soil and the proper heat, and it sprouts by itself. You don't need to magically do anything to make that seed grow and sprout into a plant. It's going to do that if you provide the right environment on its own. And I think that's what unschooling is. You provide the environment. It's a little bit of guesswork. It's a little bit of the unknown. But once you provide the environment for the child to kind of start to blossom, then all your job at that point is just to kind of keep encouraging, keep providing the environment, and they will show you what they're interested in if you expose them to enough of the world. You know, they'll provide that to you themselves. You don't need to make them be interested in things, you know.
Do your homework. No. No, it's I think children are naturally curious, naturally imaginative, and want to learn. They have a burning desire to learn, and all we have to do is facilitate that, is help them, bring them different resources if they need it. So yeah, I think our job is not so difficult as so many people think. I think so many people, they get exhausted with parenting because they think, oh, it's so hard. I got to read them these books. I got to take them to these classes. I got to do all, help them with their homework. I got to do all this stuff. And I don't think being a child, or raising a child to be successful, or if they want to be successful, is that hard. I think all kids want to thrive. All kids want to be successful. And I personally think all kids want to be entrepreneurs. I think that's only natural. It's like once they find something they love, like I think the next step naturally is creating a business out of it. Like, why wouldn't you want to get paid doing what you love, right? I think that's just only natural, So, yeah. So I think there's just too many parents exhaust themselves unnecessarily.
Absolutely. And you've been really great today, Danilo. I appreciate you coming on the show. Along these lines, I do want to ask you kind of a final question here, just what your message would be to that next generation, to the people that are coming down the line and picking this up as the nature of podcasting and the internet goes. Most people who listen to this will be, in the future picking up our breadcrumbs. So what's kind of your overall message to those individuals?
So people in the future, I would hope that in a few years' time, that the exponential rise of number of people who are becoming anarchists and voluntarists and recognizing the power of these ideas will continue to rise, and like we said before, in order to realize a truly free or voluntary society, there does not need to be any violent revolution, any assassination, any march, any protest. All people need to do is just turn the other way, ignore them into irrelevancy, right? And so I think that's what I hope will happen. Actually, you know what? In the way Larken Rose says it, he says it really well, which is, I hope one day everybody will be an anarchist, and it won't be an amazing thing like, oh, you're an anarchist. No, of course, everybody's a voluntarist. It's not a new thing. And so basically, he was saying, I hope to make myself obsolete, render myself obsolete, which is a great sentiment, and it's actually the opposite of the state, right? They want to make sure that they're always needed, right? And they create their own demand, their own artificial demand. So hopefully, our content will not be needed in the future, in the near future. I think that's the hope. In the same way that the message of the abolitionists of the 19th century, their message is no longer needed today, right? For the most part, most people innately understand that it is immoral to own another human being in the sense of chattel slavery. And so I think our job as modern day abolitionists is to expand that concept to say, yes, and it is also immoral for a state to, or a group of people calling themselves a state to claim ownership. It doesn't have to be complete chattel slavery, but it's a percentage of our productivity, right? That also is immoral, and in a sense is slavery. So, like that one meme which says, if 100% theft is of your productivity is complete slavery, and 0% is complete freedom, at what point is it not slavery, right? And there is no point. Whenever you have a violent institution claiming a portion of your productivity, you're not free. So
Absolutely, yeah. I know that Larken Rose talk. I think it's Anarcho he was speaking at or something, and I really liked that idea too. It's kind of like when you become aware that Santa Claus isn't real, you don't call yourself like a non-Santa Clausist, you know. Right. It just is, and that's it. You know, that it's over, and then you move on. And I think I agree with you. It will be irrelevant to declare yourself an anarchist, a voluntarist, a peaceful parent, especially once that becomes common knowledge. And you know, exactly. We're just sharing information. We're just talking about it here online because that's how I came to this knowledge. I'm not some genius who was able to philosophize all these things by myself. It's people like yourself. It's people who are putting the time in to relay that information back to the next generation. And so I really appreciate the work that you do, Danilo. It's been really helpful for me to clarify the message. And I know people can reach you, I think, on Bitcoin, PayPal, and Patreon. Head on over to peacefulanarchism.com. Subscribe to Danilo's channel, Peaceful Anarchism, and any other places where people can reach you or anything else you wanted to finish up with.
Yeah, Facebook. I think it's facebook.com/peacefulanarchism. Like my page, and on YouTube, Peaceful Anarchism. Check out my channel, subscribe if you are so inclined. And I got my Bitcoin, my PayPal, and my Patreon, patreon.com/peacefulanarchism. If you want to help me produce more content, I do this for free. Everything I offer is for free. Podcasts, you know, my short 10-minute videos. I do some writing. I also have an email list where I also send out my content as well. For people who do not necessarily use Facebook. Some people are, can you believe it? So please check me out and let me know what you think. And you know, if you send me a friend request and we don't have a bunch of mutual friends, just let me know, you know, how you found me, because I don't necessarily like to accept friends on Facebook who I don't have a good amount of mutual friends. I don't know if you're the same way, but yeah, you know, send me a message, let me know what you think of my content. It's always wonderful to hear feedback, because that's how we all grow and improve, right? We have to hear what people think, right? So got to respond to the market. So thank you. Thanks a lot for having me on your show. I really appreciate it, Tyler.
Excellent. Well, I appreciate your time, and thanks for joining us on the Liberty Lifestyle Podcast. Truth, freedom, and prosperity. Take care, everyone. Thanks.
Take care.